want to make sure I didn't skip something. Okay, so we can also have inequalities like this where I have a rational function, a fraction of two equations with x in them, okay? And we want to figure out what values of x will work for these two, okay? So what we do here is these are actually not too hard to do, but you want to think of where are these equal to 0? So where is x plus 2 over x minus 3 equal to 0? Okay, which to do this, I can multiply both sides by the denominator to get rid of it. So if I multiply by x minus 3 on both sides of the equation, that would cancel out the bottom, and 0 times anything is still just 0, right? So I would get x plus 2 equals 0. Or in other words, x equals -2. Okay? So this is where it equals 0. Okay? And that's the place it could change. The only other issue with this is that I had something in the bottom of this fraction, and we all remember that we can't divide by 0 in fractions, right? This couldn't be 0. So if it was 0, some weird things can start happening, okay? So whenever you do inequalities with a fraction in it, you also need to think about where is the bottom 0? Because that will make the whole thing not make any sense, and that should be kind of included as a place where your answer could change, where this inequality could change from being true to untrue, and vice versa. Okay. So what I'm also going to do is look at, I'll set x minus 3 equal to 0, so I get x is equal to 3. Is another place where weird things could happen, and I could be changing whether this inequality is true or not. So then we're going to do precisely the same thing that we did before, just with these two numbers. So -2 and +3 are the two places where we could be changing the truth value of this inequality. Okay, I'm going to copy down the inequality again somewhere over here so that I can kind of scroll down a little bit. Okay, so this was our inequality. I just copied it down a little lower so I could scroll down a bit. Okay, so then I'm going to start plugging in numbers into the inequality, some that are to the left of -2. So, I don't know, -3 seems like a good option. Let's throw that in there. We would get -1 over -3 minus 3 is -6. -1 over -6 is equal to 1/6, okay, which is not less than or equal to 0. It's actually bigger than 0. So this chunk over here doesn't work. It doesn't make the inequality true. Okay. So now we're going to do the same thing for this chunk of the number line between -2 and 3. So let's plug in something between -2 and 3. We'll plug in 0. Okay. So I plug in 0. I'm going to get 2 over 0 minus 3 is -3, okay, which this is -2/3. And that is less than or equal to 0. So the inequality is true in the in-between of these two numbers. Okay. Now we just need to check, does it work over here? Okay. Bigger than 3 is the inequality true. So I pick another number. 4. Let's do 4. So when I plug in 4, I get 6 on the top. 4 minus 3 is positive 1. So 6 over positive 1 is positive 6. That is not less than or equal to 0. So this does not make the inequality true. Okay? So I now know exactly where the inequality is true. It's in this chunk, a middle chunk right here. Okay? Now I should kind of be careful about my endpoints here. So I knew that this endpoint, the -2, that came from setting the top of the fraction equal to 0. Okay? So in this inequality, I do have an equal to 0. And so when x plus 2 is 0, the whole fraction is 0. And so the inequality is true at this boundary point. But what about positive 3? Okay. Positive 3 came from setting the bottom of the fraction equal to 0. Okay. And that was because we can't divide by 0. Right? If I set x equal 3 in this equation, it doesn't make any sense, right? Because I'll be dividing by 0. So it is not true at that endpoint. Okay? So in other words, the interval where it's true is, well, we're going to include -2. So we do our bracket. And then we go up to 3 with a parenthesis to say we're not including positive 3. And this would be our answer. Okay. To let you absorb that just for a sec. So again, just our process was we figured out where the top of the fraction was 0 and where the bottom of the fraction was 0. Those were the places where my inequality could change from being untrue to true. And then we just plugged in numbers in those like chunks of the number line to figure out what parts made it true and what parts made it false.